Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Marshall, and my partner is Lauren Liphart. We are presenting our Behavior Change Replication Project, an article by Curdy and Dallery written in 2013, and we are in section Spec 611. So our article was titled Internet-Based Contingency Management Increases Walking in Sedentary Adults. It was written by Curdy and Dallery in 2013. The purpose of the study was to increase walking in sedentary adults through self-monitoring. It was set in an office, and there were 6 participants, 5 of which were female and one was male. Their ages ranged in 50 to 71 years old, making the median age 59 years old, and all of the participants were Caucasian. For our literature review, Ogden and colleagues in 2014 examined the most recent national estimates and trends in the prevalence of childhood and adult obesity in the United States. Weight and height, or recumbent length, were measured in 9,120 participants in 2011 through 2012 nationally representative National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. 17% of the youth in America were found to be obese. 35% of adults in America were found to be obese. Overall, there's been no significant changes in obesity prevalence since 2003 and the 2004 study. Obesity continues to remain a high and prevalent issue in the United States. Green and colleagues in 2016 examined and evaluated the effects of 3 behavioral interventions to reduce prolonged sitting among office workers. The participants were 3 female office workers, and the setting was a private university in the southeastern USA. The design was a concurrent multiple baseline design across participants. The dependent variable was the number of episodes or bouts of prolonged sitting that were more than 30 minutes per workday. In baseline, the participants wore an actigraph accelerometer to measure physical activity throughout the workday. Phase 1, information was given to the participants through the examiners reading a script to the participants outlining the health risks of remaining sedentary throughout the workday. Specifically, the experimenter told participants that prolonged sitting increases the risk for obesity, diabetes, and other health problems. Participants were instructed to take short breaks, anywhere between 30 seconds to 2 minutes, of light walking every 30 minutes to increase health benefits. In phase 2, tactile prompting was introduced through a vibrating watch. It vibrated every 30 minutes and it gave a message that says stand up. The participants were instructed that when the watch vibrated and instructed them to stand up. In phase 3, participants were given feedback on their bouts of sitting via email at 8 o'clock in the morning. For example, they received an objective statement that would say something like, you averaged about 6 bouts of sitting yesterday. The participants would also encourage to set goals for themselves. When this was prompted through the 8 o'clock emails, they would set a personal goal and they would send them to the experimenter via email. An analysis of the bout duration revealed that the mean duration of prolonged sitting decreased for all participants during the intervention phases relative to baseline. Hussey explored the effects of incentive-based physical activity and fitness in 6 and 12-year-old children. This was set in a hospital in communities of Singapore. The participants were 251 healthy and neurotypical children that age ranged in about 6 to 12 years. The intervention group were educated using pamphlets in which gave them the benefits of physical activity. They were also given information on structured weekend outdoor events. They were given a pedometer, and these children were given open pedometers so they can track and see their step count. There was also an incentive implemented. Each child that logged an average of at least 8,000 steps per day were given a voucher for $30 at the end of the month. Children were also entered into a lottery for $120 if they met their step goal and attended 2 of the recommended weekend activities. The control group continued their daily activities, and they also wore pedometers, but theirs was closed. They could not see their step count. The results. At the end of the 9-month program, the mean number of steps per day were significantly more in the intervention group, roughly by about 893 steps more. 24% of the intervention group reached the target of 8,000 steps per day, and 2% of the control group reached the target of 8,000 steps per day. Duvier and colleagues investigated whether substituting sitting with standing and self-perceived light walking in the free living conditions would improve cardiometabolic risk factors, mood, and cognition in overweight or obese adults in 2017. Duvier and colleagues believe that a sedentary lifestyle has been associated with an increase in risk of type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and premature mortality. The participants in this study were 24 adults aged 30 to 40 years old with a body mass index between 25 and 35 kilograms. There were 13 men in this study and 11 women. An accelerometer was used to discriminate between the time spent inactive and the time spent standing or walking. It also measured step count. The intervention. All participants were instructed to follow a 2-activity regime in free living conditions lasting 4 days each. Sit and sit less. The sit intervention, participants were instructed to restrict walking and standing to more than an hour a day each, spending the remainder of the waking day sitting. The sit less intervention, participants were instructed to substitute at least 7 hours of the day sitting with 4 hours of self-perceived light walking and less than 3 hours of standing, and to interrupt sitting preferably every 30 minutes with standing or walking bouts. The results. Duvier and his colleagues found that cholesterol was lower following the sit less versus sit intervention. Blood pressure was also lower after the sit less regime was implemented. Female subjects were found to perform higher in alertness after the sit less regime as well. There are no significant differences that were found in memory, executive functioning, or sleep between the regimes. During the active regime, time spent sitting was successfully altered in accordance to the protocol. Sedentary bouts of less than 30 minutes were significantly lower during the sit less regime. Reducing sitting time in free living conditions markedly improved insulin sensitivity, circulating lipids, and blood pressure. Substituting sitting, standing, and self-perceived light walking is an effective strategy to improve cardiometabolic risk factors in overweight and obese subjects, thus making them healthier. Klein and colleagues review and examine the structure of the change in criterion design to date to identify and implement best practice for future use. So, we used a change in criterion design for a replication project, and as we know, the change in criterion design, CCD, utilizes stepwise benchmarks for manipulating a dimension, i.e. accuracy, frequency, duration, latency, or magnitude of a single behavior already present in the individual's repertoire, from the Cooper book, 2nd edition. The utility of the change in criterion design as a behavior change agent is evident. It is a flexible design that can be used with any population on a diverse range of behaviors in a variety of settings while maintaining adequate and experimental control. Klein and colleagues from the 2017 article. The population that they have found change in criterion used from the article studied were 906 individuals participated in the change in criterion research. The therapists were defined as the individual responsible for implementing the contingency. That means that it could be a therapist, parent, teacher, staff, peer, or any other agency. The settings spanned from school, hospital, clinic, work, or any other institution. And target behavior characteristics of the change in criterion design are the direction, did it increase or decrease? The dimensions, as discussed earlier, behavior type, academic behaviors, physical sport, communicative behaviors, habitual behaviors, medical, or compliance. Klein and colleagues discovered that the majority of studies used a simple A-B design, about 63% of them, with a small percentage using baseline only, 4.9%, a reversal A-B design, which was about 8%, and a withdrawal ABA was about 3%, and all the other designs were 21%. Results. So Klein and colleagues reviewed 106 articles. These articles contained 267 change in criterion design graphs, and they were from 57 different journals. Approximately 25% of data reviewed met all the requirements necessary for adequate control, according to Klein and his colleagues in 2017. This shows a lack of understanding in the science of the change in criterion design. According to Klein and his colleagues, specifically, most studies lacked variation in phase magnitude and did not compensate with a reversal, lacked variation in phase length, or implemented 2 or fewer changes in criterion, while some restricted responding so that the criterions were forcibly met and or could not exceed the criterion. Take care when graphing and use best practice to avoid these errors. So our replication project.
Hi, my name is Lauren Lippart. As Stephanie already introduced me, I was her partner on this project. So I'm going to go over the behavior replication project that we completed as a group. So these are our methods. First, I'm going to talk about the participants. The participants in this study were 2 students that are currently enrolled in the BCBA Master's Program at Ball State University. Lauren is a 26-year-old female that lives in Denver, Colorado. Stephanie is a 32-year-old female who lives in Chicago, Illinois. First setting. During this study, each participant was expected to wear a Fitbit throughout their daily routine. The Fitbit would be worn when participants stepped out of bed and throughout the day until they got back into bed to go to sleep. The setting includes, but is not limited to, each participant's place of work, home, fitness center, car, stores, or really anywhere that you're walking throughout the day. Materials. The materials that we needed were 1, a Fitbit, and we used the Fitbit in order to measure the number of steps that each participant took each day. And 2, a fitness log. And in the fitness log, we recorded what different activities we did that day, as well as the date and how many steps that were taken. Behavioral definition. Steps are defined as lifting your foot above the ground 6 inches and then putting it back on the ground in a manner that moves the person to a new space, followed by an alternating foot. An example of a step is Stephanie walking forward 1 pace. A non-example of a step is Lauren lifting her foot into the air to look at gum on her shoe and then placing her foot back in a different spot. Data collection. For this study, a frequency data collection method was used. Participants were expected to begin collecting data wearing their Fitbit from the moment they put their first foot on the ground until the moment they got back in bed to go to sleep. Once in bed, participants would record the number of steps they took per day according to their Fitbit, as well as a list of activities they engaged in their fitness log. Data collection was done the same way for both the baseline phase and treatment phase. The study that we modeled ours after included screening surveys in order to choose who would be eligible to be a participant. For the purpose of our study, we did not administer this screener survey because we knew each of us would be participants in the study in order to follow the project rubric provided by Course Spec 611 at Ball State University. Design. Our behavior replication project was a single subject research design with changing criterion. We used the design in order to determine if a functional relationship exists between the amount of steps taken each day and self-monitoring through the use of Fitbits. Baseline. This experiment will use both participants in the baseline phase. However, each participant will be collecting their own baseline data. The participants will wear their Fitbit from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep. The participant will keep the Fitbit on during the course of their day to track their step count in the natural environment. The Fitbit will track the amount of steps during this phase via the app. Treatment. This experiment will use a change in criterion design to set the step goals. The participants will assess their step goal in 5-day blocks. The participant will meet or exceed their goal for 3 consecutive days. So that means in order to change the criterion, you would need to have 3 days in a row with meeting the set criterion. After the step goal has been met or exceeded for the 3 days, the 3-step count will be increased to 1,000 steps. Or increased 1,000 steps. Participants are allowed to rest 2 days in which their daily step activity will not be monitored. And we said for our case, maybe it was Saturdays and Sundays so that you could relax. IOA. The participants of this replication study will download a video of their step count by midnight every day for pre-selected dates. Using YouTube, the participant will hold the step display in front of the webcam or phone camera for several seconds, type the total in a result box, and click Post Video. We are going to use total count IOA in order to determine what our IOA was. And that equation is smaller count over large divided by the larger count times 100. Treatment integrity. The following barriers to treatment integrity existed for this replication project. The first one was loss of collected data due to technology dying and needing to be recharged. So in some of the collected data samples, we had forgotten to charge the device or assumed that it would stay charged longer than it would, and the Fitbit died. And so some of the steps were not counted for that day, which did alter some of the data. Another thing that happened was if the Fitbit is not worn consistently throughout the day, so if you were going swimming, or if we forgot to put it on right when we got up, or if we took it off and then we decided to get out of bed and go start doing stuff again, those steps were not counted. So that also messed up some of the different data points on both of our data collection. And the last one was the Fitbit miscalculates steps. And this one I noticed for me, especially because I was driving long distances in the car for a trip. And during that time, I was noticing that the Fitbit was counting steps as I was driving, but I wasn't moving. I was just in the car. So I'm not sure what made the Fitbit do that, but that also messed with the data, especially in my baseline phase. So this is my graph. As you can see, I was able to do a baseline as well as 3 different criterion phases. During the baseline, I found that my mean was it was 8,981, so about 9,000 steps. So for my first criterion, I decided to make it 10,000 steps. And during that phase, I was able to get 3 consecutive 10,000 or above steps within 4 different sessions. So that was pretty fast. I was feeling pretty confident about that. So then I bumped the steps up for the next criterion phase, which was 11,000 steps. And during this one, as you can see, it took me 8 sessions in order to get 3 consecutive data points that were 11,000 steps and above. So that took a little bit longer. And I'm not sure if that was maybe because I was taking longer, it was further into the study, I wasn't feeling as motivated, or what could have contributed to that, but it did in fact take me longer. And then my last one, I ended up bumping it up another 1,000 steps, and that was to 12,000 for the criterion. And during this last phase, I didn't get to complete it because the project ended. However, in this one, immediately I was able to get 12,000 steps or above, which makes me think maybe I could get this one quicker and in less sessions than in my previous steps. But overall, I did increase my steps throughout the project, which was really positive. This is Stephanie's graph. And in hers, if you look at it, she also had a baseline and then 3 different criterion changes. For her mean, in her baseline, she had 4,378 steps. So for her first criterion, she put that her steps would reach 4,500, and she was able to do this within consecutively to either reach that goal or above within the first 3 sessions. And then so she bumped her criterion up another 1,000 steps. And again, in this phase, she was able to improve her step count in 3 consecutive sessions that were at that 5,500 steps or above. And in her last phase, the same thing. She increased the number of steps for her criterion, and she was able to, in 3 sessions, continue to increase her steps. So the self-monitoring seemed to work a lot better because it made her more aware, and she was paying attention and tracking it more just by the end of the night. And so this seemed to really work for her in a positive way, and her steps also increased. Conclusion. According to the data collected by each participant, one can see that both participants' steps increased throughout the intervention of self-monitoring. As you can see from the graphs, Stephanie was able to reach each criterion more quickly by reaching her goal in 3 consecutive sessions during each criterion phase. Lauren reached her criterion goal at a slower pace. During criterion 10,000, it took Lauren 4 sessions to consecutively reach her goal 3 days in a row. During criterion 11,000, it took me 8 sessions in order to consecutively reach my goal in 3 days. The last goal that I set for myself was criterion 12,000, and even though this phase wasn't completed, the 2 data points that I did collect on my own steps were above 12,000 steps, which makes me think maybe I was becoming more aware of what was going on with my steps and being more deliberate in how many I was taking per day and setting more accurate goals for myself. The calculated IOA for our behavior replication project was 90% as calculated through 10 pre-selected dates recorded via Google Hangout. And we were really proud of our IOA data and that we were so consistent with it.
Limitations. So according to the White Bible, Cooper, Heron, and Heward, the 2nd edition, written in 2007, limitations of changing criterion designs are the target behavior must already be in the subject's repertoire, and that incorporating the necessary features of the design may impede optimal learning rates. Our personal limitations were the time frame. Due to the accelerated course, our group was unable to collect a full set of data required to complete and fully analyze the project. Reinforcement. We were unable to implement the monetary incentive the original study had used as reinforcement. Participants. Our original study included 6 participants, and we were a group of 2 people. Setting. Our original study was recorded at an office, and our participants recorded data in a variety of settings, including home, work, errands, the gym. Therefore, our life balance was able to interfere with our results. Here is a list of the references used to help us with the project. And here is our group contribution. And that is the end of our slideshow. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in the thread below. We look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.